This is UFOs Australia, and my name's Tim Grover. Welcome to the first episode of UFOs Australia. Today it's my great pleasure to be having a chat with Roger Stankovic. Roger Stankovic's current position is with MUFON. He's the National Director of Australia and New Zealand. So really thrilled to be here with him today. I really hope you enjoy this video. Hi Roger, thank you so much for being here today. It really is a pleasure to have you here. I know you've got a lot of experience in the UFO field, so really keen to have a chat with you, just get a bit of your get your thoughts on the whole UFO subject. As you know, the UFO subject is quite an emotive type subject. So people like yourself and I, we believe in UFOs, aliens, and have an active interest in it. There's also the people that, probably don't even care about it, don't even think about it, and whether they're real or not, they probably don't care about. And then you've got the other people who are quite passionate in the fact that, these things aren't real, I don't believe it, for whatever reason that may be, who knows. So I'm just really keen to find out a little bit about your background and what prompted or what sparked your interest in the UFO field.
Okay, so my particular interest in the UFO field date back to when I was a teenager, living on my parents' property, and I'll address the questions later about how people have different opinions about whether they believe in UFOs or not. But my personal experiences is what started it off and made me passionate about it. And I think that to be passionate about the subject, you have to actually see something yourself.
Yeah.
There are people that don't see things and they're still passionate about it because they read around the topic, and it's quite a complex topic. It's very complex, and there's a mountain of literature on it. So even if you haven't seen something, in my instance, I knew about UFOs when I was a teenager, but I thought they were fiction, and I was quite skeptical. But at one stage, I decided to walk down. My parents had a 10-hectare property at the back in the western suburbs of Sydney, and we had 2 dams on our property. And there was this one evening as a teenager, I went down to the back dam and decided to just skip stones on the back dam, and it was getting late. And I saw this light coming from the south. On the corner of my eye, I was facing the dam, facing east. And then this light was coming. I thought, that's unusual. I got this bright light coming. It's moving. It's not a star. It could be an aircraft or whatever, but it was getting brighter and brighter as it moved towards me. And then it just stopped and hovered right in front of me, but it was quite bright, like about half the size of the moon. And then it did this crazy maneuver and then just flew down the back of the hill and landed. And that frightened me because I thought all these things after me.
Yeah.
Am I going to be abducted or whatever? I don't know. I didn't know. I didn't know too much about UFOs at that stage, but I just took off as fast as I could, running. The farmhouse was quite a distance away, so I had to sprint for about 200 metres to get to the house.
Yeah.
And when I got in, I just, slammed the kitchen door open and told my parents what happened. And they remember the incident. And basically my sisters remember the incident. And they said I was quite shocked by the whole thing.
So were they witnesses as well to the actual light itself?
No,
or just to your?
No, it was just me. It happened. Okay. It happened within about 30 seconds or a minute. All told, but and I never looked back.
Yeah,
I just I was so frightened by the incident. I never wanted to look back to see, is it following me? What's happening? So that's how it began. I thought, oh, now I really believe in UFOs because I think I've just had this experience and it was just so weird. I couldn't explain. I went through all the combinations and permutations in my head within a second about what it could possibly be, and nothing fitted. So I sort of thought, oh, this is something really weird and not normal.
Yeah. So did it make any noises? Or
no, it was perfectly silent. But I think I remember on the way home, I could hear this buzzing sound over my head. I don't know whether, that was the UFO or whether it was an insect. Who knows? You can't, I can't really say for sure what it was, but. When I was looking at it, it was perfectly silent. Yeah.
Wow, that's quite an experience to have as a young teenager.
Yeah, yeah.
So it's obviously had a profound impact on your life. Hence, how you've got into researching UFOs.
That's right. I started reading books about the topic, and then I started as I went to university. After that, I'd stop off at Central Station and take the buy UFO magazines off the rack, and it's just as if there was a switch that was triggered in my head that I've got to read about this. Yeah. And the more I read about it, the more I felt that it was something real.
Yeah.
Like the more you read about it, the more credible the phenomenon seems.
Yeah.
You read about other people's experiences and you can empathize with them. And obviously there are misconceptions in this field and a lot of hoaxes and whatever, but the material that's published in most books has been through filters. The people that are publishing these books actually know what to publish in terms of credibility. Was the witness credible? Is the sighting a credible sighting? And if you go through Project Blue Book's cases, there are cases where scientists have actually gone through things with a fine-tooth comb, and basically a lot of those cases. Even in the 50s, where there was a lot of ridicule and a lot of skepticism about UFOs.
For those that are new to the UFO subject or just getting into it, you're the National Director for MUFON for Australia and New Zealand. So who are MUFON? What does it stand for? And what's the goal? What are they looking to do?
Okay, so I'll begin with what the acronym stands for. So MUFON actually began as the Midwestern UFO Network. And basically that involved a lot of the states around the lakes, the Great Lakes. Yeah. There were a lot of UFO sightings there. And basically it began as an offspin of the closure of Project Blue Book in the 60s, in 69 actually. So we've been around for 50 years now. So it's the largest and the oldest UFO network in the world. Basically we recruit people. We recruit civilians to actually join the network, and basically we've changed our name to the Mutual UFO Network from the Midwestern Network. A lot of the old members from APRO as well were part of the Mutual UFO Network as well.
And what's APRO for those that are, I guess, new to the subject?
Okay, so that was the Aerial Phenomena Research Organisation in the 50s.
Okay.
So that was organised by Coral Lorenz and her husband. So basically, Coral Lorenz saw a UFO in the 50s, I believe, when she was a child. She was affected as well by the impact of the sighting, and she wanted to form an organisation, a formal organisation that was civilian based, and they formed APRO. So the APRO had quite a few members, but once some of them actually swapped over from APRO to MUFON. Mm-hmm. So basically we recruit civilians to actually join our organisation. They have to undergo, you can join as a member, or you can actually join as a field investigator. If you want to become a field investigator, you have to study the manual, and that we have certain methods that we use to actually analyse the reports, how to interview people, how to go through a video and tell how to analyse the video, how to analyse pictures, how to approach an investigation, what sort of tools, software that you can use to actually discount all the different things that it could possibly be. Mm-hmm. So what our aim is to look at the UFO subject in a scientific way, and we do that by using various methods and tools, but we also try to eliminate anything that it could possibly be that is prosaic explanation to the actual sighting, that we can actually eliminate all these different possibilities that could be before we actually class it as what we call an unknown, which is a UFO. unidentified flying object.
So does that mean that all the reports of sightings or experiences or whatever it may be, does that come to yourself for the Australian and New Zealand experiences?
Okay, so we've got a thing called the CMS, which is the case management system. The case management system is actually just a database that's on the internet. So basically the database, anyone that's seen a UFO can just type up, Google up, report a UFO. And usually the very first thing on the page, link on the page will be MUFON. So they can click onto the MUFON link, and then they can actually open up the database, and then they can just directly put their report in. Once the report gets into the database, it's emailed to me, and then I can distribute it, the cases out to my field investigators, and that's how it happens in the US as well. So it's sort of like it runs itself in a way. Once we obtain a report, usually the reports come from the United States. So even if somebody reports a report here, it may do a loop through the United States, and it'll come back to me, and then I can allocate the reports out to the field investigators, or I do the reports as well.
Okay. So in regards to Australia and UFO sightings or experiences, are there any, hotspots where you receive more reports than perhaps, other areas?
Well, not necessarily. I mean, some people may think that there's hotspots around it. There may be some population areas of Australia that are sparsely populated, and you might see more UFOs per capita or people there. But usually we have the most sightings at the most populated cities. So Sydney gets the most sightings, obviously, because there's more eyes and ears out, in the night or the day to actually see these things. So, and you can actually go onto a program called UFO Stalker, STALKER.
Okay, and what's that?
UFOstalker.org, and that will actually give you a map, and it's got a little flying saucer on the location where the actual sighting was reported. Okay. And these are only reports that we've classified as actual definite UFOs or genuine cases. Okay. So if you look, if you open it up, it'll give you like all these little places. If you click onto the UFO, the little flying saucer, it'll come up with all the data. It'll come up when it was reported, and various other little bits and pieces of information that you can actually gather on it. So if you want to have a look at hotspots, you can have a look at that. I had a look last night. I couldn't find any hotspots in particular, but I can see that mainly they're centered around cities like the capital cities, basically. Yeah.
Okay. And so there's a few thoughts on the UFO subject. So again, if you're new to the subject, you're probably going onto YouTube or, particular websites and listening to different speakers to get a bit of an understanding or at least to learn more about the subject. So there's a few different thoughts, being that, there's physical aliens, nuts and bolts UFOs, which are based, they come from Earth. There's the same, but they come from another planet. They could be interdimensional. They could be consciousness based. I'd just love to hear what your thoughts are on could it be all of them? Who knows? What are your thoughts on that?
This is just my personal opinion, but I think it's just, I'd like to believe that they're just nuts and bolts UFOs, basically, that have come from another planet. Yeah. That's the basic explanation of what you can. When you're starting to talk about interdimensional things and consciousness, we don't have a really good grasp of that in terms of scientific data to prove that that's the case. But I think that there have been some scientists like Eric Davies, recently in the limelight for the EDW paper, the notes that he took recently from Admiral Wilson. He's been on YouTube, and he actually went to the Skinwalker Ranch that was owned by Bob Bigelow. And some of the scientists there, now these are astrophysicists that are actually on location. They can actually see UFOs coming through portholes, apparently. But so there's some interdimensional aspect to it in that sense that if they can use a wormhole or whatever to come through, the sky, well, that brings into the fact that they could be interdimensional. According to Bob Lazar, we're looking at an antimatter reactor. Okay,
because there's a lot about Bob Lazar that he was employed by the United States government to back engineer, I guess, propulsion systems for UFOs. So, that would suggest there would be a physical, nuts and bolts aspect to this whole subject.
Well, that's right. I mean, he's in my eyes, he's quite a credible individual. I've done a lot of background reading. I've been following him since 1989. And so basically that proves that they're nuts and bolts because he said he saw 9 craft at S4. So, and that they were trying to back engineer them. So basically, I view them as nuts and bolts craft. They're physical things that are coming here from another planet, whether it be intergalactic or extragalactic, I don't know. You'd have to have some really fancy technology to come from another galaxy to this galaxy, but certainly interstellar. But basically, I think that you could bring into all of those concepts that you brought up, you could bring into the argument to a certain degree, but when it boils down to it, they're just nuts and bolts craft that they've constructed and that are coming here to Earth. That's what I believe. Whether they can travel through wormholes, it's anyone's guess.
One day we may find out. Who knows?
Yeah. But the anti-gravity reactor will should enable the mechanism of the transport to be able to curve space and time. So in the sense that if you can curve space and time to actually use that to your advantage to travel through space, then that could bring in the interdimensional thing and the consciousness thing. There is some previous talk about the extraterrestrials using their own consciousness to actually maneuver the craft. Phil Corso mentioned it in his book Day After Roswell, where he was saying that there was an apparatus that they could put on their head, and basically they could transfer their thoughts into the craft, and it was just instantaneous, and they could actually maneuver the craft that way.
Yeah.
So all these aspects can be brought into it, but I think they're still just physical craft.
Yeah. So it sounds like this technology, assuming it exists, assuming, Bob Lazar is, a genuine guy, it sounds like this is very advanced technology. It sounds like it could probably really benefit humanity. But yet it doesn't seem, or at least publicly, it doesn't seem to be taken seriously by, mainstream science and probably the politics as well. What are your thoughts around why that may be?
I think that it is taken seriously by some people in politics and some people in the scientific field. And I can back that argument up because if you look back in history, Jacques Vallée, he was an astrophysicist. He believed in UFOs. He's published several books. People like J. Allen Hynek, an astrophysicist again, Stanton Friedman, a nuclear physicist. The list goes on. The people that don't know a lot about the phenomenon in the scientific community dismiss it because they don't know what's going on. Yeah. If they knew what was going on, and if they did as much background reading as I have, and I've got a PhD in neuroscience, so basically if they did as much background reading as I did, they would realize that there is absolutely something to this phenomenon. Yeah. The amount of data and literature, it can't be justified to say that it's just nothing. It's impossible.
Yeah. To me, even if you're a gambling man, we're on one planet, which is part of one galaxy, and there's a billion planets in this galaxy, and then there's a billion other galaxies with another billion planets.
Yeah, a lot of exoplanets are being discovered now. Yeah.
Exactly right. So to me, it just seems how could this not be a genuine, subject that's worth real rigor to improve, potentially improve the planet. I can only see that as something that would benefit everyone on the planet.
Yeah.
So I guess with that in mind, with regards to people making reports, what interesting cases have you come across recently, or not recently, but over your time with MUFON?
Okay, so as I said before, basically we only look at the unknowns. So that these are the cases where we look at every single case, I should say, and we try and eliminate all the different possibilities that these things could be. A lot of the cases we get are just witnesses looking at something, but they haven't taken a video or they haven't taken pictures because it's something that happens so quickly. But the ones that we have video evidence for and pictures, some of them are quite interesting. There was one video that was sent to us from a guy in South Australia who caught a UFO on his the dash cam of his car inadvertently. So he installed 2 dash cams in his car, one in the back, one at the front. And one day he was at a shopping centre, and he after shopping went back to his car, and he was waiting for his wife, who was lagging behind, to enter the car. But he turned on the ignition, and then which set off the dash cam. And when he was cleaning the car one day, he knocked the back dash cam up to face up accidentally. He didn't realise it. And this dash cam caught a UFO coming up from behind a building and into from out of the cloud. And you could see that this little, what looked like a small white orb of light, fleeting from one cloud to another. And the manoeuvres were absolutely unbelievable.
So was this during the day?
This was during broad daylight.
Wow. Okay.
So, and this guy's actually caught quite a few of these little orbs coming in and out of the clouds. And we've had it analysed. I've had a look at it, and I couldn't quite work out. You can actually see it coming in and out of the cloud. So it's actually at 2,000 metres. So we found it difficult to actually determine the altitude of this object and the size of it. But we did some calculations, and we're estimating that it's about 2,000 feet up, which is what the level of cumulonimbus clouds are at the time, and they were the type of clouds that were there at the time. And so there was a lot of blue sky, a lot of white clouds, cumulonimbus clouds, and you could see this object coming in and out of the clouds and casting a bit of a shadow on the cloud. So that was quite interesting, and we analysed it. I actually sent it to MUFON in the United States, and there's an image analysis specialist there who's actually featured in on programs on TV like in the History Channel. So he's actually quite renowned for analysing these things, and he says basically it's unknown. Basically, we've gone through the camera footage. We can do things like we can determine whether it's CGI, whether it's CGI animation that the person did. He actually signed a stat dec to say he hadn't done it. Basically, we can go into the camera. We can look at the metadata on the camera. We can work out what's going on. And basically, we came up with nothing. We couldn't actually say what it was, so we classified it as unknown.
Yeah.
So that was an interesting case. And there was another case of great interest, a quite tragic case where someone was actually killed in the incident. So basically, this happened in New Zealand in 2013, I believe, where there was a driver on the road driving his car with his girlfriend in the right next to him. And it was very early hours of the morning. It was raining, very poor conditions on the road, very dark as well. And an object flew into the windscreen, crashed through the windscreen, hit this guy in the face, in the head, killed him instantly, went through the car to find an exit and smashed through the back windscreen.
Okay, wow.
So there was an object that actually we think it might have been an orb. So basically, there was a coronial inquest about this, and basically I got told by a lawyer from New Zealand about the incident, and I didn't think too much of it because objects do get flung off vehicles as a passing vehicle comes by. And there was a passing vehicle in this instance, being a utility of some sort, a white utility. But it's been through a coronial inquisition and the forensic analysis, and they are saying that all the different possibilities that could have happened. The only thing they can think of is that something came off this vehicle. So it was not anyone in the bush that threw something onto the car as it was going by. It was something. It never hit the ground, so the object never touched the actual ground because they couldn't find any evidence that it actually hit the road. And so they're saying that the only scenario they can come up with is that this object came off the passing vehicle. But MUFON's looked at this, and we think that it's actually impossible for anything to have come off this a passing vehicle as well. Number one, because of the speed of the vehicle that was passing them, and number two, because the only person that was driving in that area had a canopy on his utility, and so we don't think it came off that vehicle. And so basically, there were a lot of organisations that were involved in the investigation of this incident, and we couldn't work out the forces involved where this object actually. If you can imagine the force of an object having to smash through a laminated windscreen of a car, then come through the car, it actually decelerated. So it decelerated before it actually hit the person and killed
wow.
it.
So
Otherwise, it would have decapitated the person.
Wow. So they could actually work that out after the investigation?
Yes, the forces involved in actually smashing through the glass, hitting the person in the head, killing him. Now, basically, this object tried to find a route out of the car. So it was raining. All the windows were up, the back windscreen, obviously. So it went through the car trying to find an exit and smashed through the back windscreen.
So it's coming through the front window. It's hit the person, unfortunately, in the face, and then somehow it's manoeuvred to then leave out the back window.
Exactly. Okay. And so it smashed it. Now, there was an extensive police search for the object. 400 man-hours were spent looking for the object, and it was never found.
Wow, that's incredible.
So basically, the object was never found. The physics involved in actually it smashing through the windscreen, killing somebody, and then smashing through the back windscreen are impossible.
Okay.
Number three, basically, it could never have come off a vehicle, and there's no other explanation. So basically, there were four other organisations involved in the inquiry, in the Inquisition. The US Army was involved.
Oh, wow. Okay.
This is in New Zealand, but the US Army, for some strange reason, were involved. Okay, there were several. The University of Otago was involved, and there were two other organisations involved in New Zealand, scientific organisations looking at what could have caused this.
Yeah.
So we think it was an orb.
Wow.
We think it was an orb that, an extraterrestrial orb that actually went through the vehicle. We're thinking, okay, well, could it have been an actual, some sort of a drone? And I don't know of any sort of drone that could have done that. But the actual shape of the actual object was circular. So it was about 8 centimetres in diameter and circular. And the post-mortem report says that the coroner was saying that he hadn't seen an injury like this in 30 years.
Yeah.
So it was a semicircular injury to the head that caused the death of the individual.
I mean, that's so sad to hear. And, you know, there's no way it's a drone. If a drone was to hit a front windscreen, it would just get smashed to smithereens. You know, it might enter the car, might.
Right.
But,
well, it didn't disintegrate. That was one of the things that was actually in the report, the cranial report. So there was an inquisition a year later, and they still came up with a blank. So MUFON inquired about obtaining the files, and we were stonewalled to a certain degree. But we're thinking about publicly or writing to the actual ombudsman about this, and trying to basically they're worried about the privacy issues involved.
Yeah.
But the whole incident has been actually has been out in the media.
So do you feel
the names are known, etc.
Okay. So do you feel there may be some other agencies involved that that actually have maybe some additional information but just haven't shared that at this moment in time?
The actual report's about a foot tall. So basically, it's quite a big file. And we want to go through the file to see whether they've missed anything. We want to go through the negative reports as well, negative aspects about the things that they think might have been a red herring and they've just left it. Yeah. So that was quite an interesting ongoing report, incident that we've got.
There's a few different aspects of the UFO, I guess, subject. And what I mean by that is that, there's talk of men in black, there's talk of crop circles, there's talks of cattle mutilations. Have you come across any of those?
Well, I haven't had any reports of men in black or crop circles personally, but I know that there have been crop circles in Australia. MUFON hasn't received any since I've been national director, but a lot of them don't get reported. But we have had reports of cattle mutilations, and we have been involved in cattle mutilations. We've looked at past cattle. I think I'm particularly interested in crop circles and cattle mutilations because they're actual physical things that you can actually analyse.
Yeah.
Unlike a video or a photograph of a UFO, there's a physical aspects of the phenomenon that you can actually look at physically and test. So, and it's been done before. It's been done to the nth degree in the UK, and but basically we've been looking at some past cattle mutilations that occurred in the 70s and some recently in Mackay. So we were interested in looking at an incident that happened in Casino up in the North Coast, where a farmer had found several cattle on his property mutilated in the 70s.
Wow. And
there was a veterinarian involved in this, where the vet had actually looked at the cattle, and he found that some of the mutilations were unexplainable in terms of a human being able to do it. So basically, I spoke to the vet for quite some time and interviewed the vet, and you'd have to know a little bit about the anatomy of cattle and how a little bit about the anatomy of bones and whatever. But he was stating that basically a lot of the surgery done on the cattle was quite precise, and it was done with possibly something like a scalpel blade. And although there's a lot of butchers around that area that could have probably done a similar job to what a surgeon could have done, because they're very handy with a knife, I couldn't imagine any butcher wanting to take the udder of a cow off for any strange reason. But what
benefit would they get?
Well, but not only that, but the cattle were actually instantly killed, and there's no evidence of any puncture holes for needles or anything. There's no bullet holes. There's no nothing. So the whole procedure involves actually instantly killing a beast that could be up to 1,000 kilos, and somehow restraining it otherwise, and doing the surgery and then killing it, or killing it and then doing the surgery immediately after. So, and also the interesting aspects about this is that basically when they take an item off like the udder, they actually cut a blood vessel. And so how do they do that? So they can cleanly take off something with no blood.
So does that mean there's no blood spillage?
There's no blood spillage anywhere. And basically it looks like the cattle are exsanguinated, which means that the blood's been taken out of the animal. So you can't actually do an analysis on the blood to find out whether there was a drug that was actually administered to the cow.
So when you're talking the blood's taken out of the animal, you literally mean all the blood's out of the animal and there's no blood spillage?
I don't know whether all the blood's taken out per se, but a lot of the blood has been taken out. It's not spilt on the ground. There's no footprints around. There's never been anybody since the 60s. No one has been actually caught mutilating cattle in this way.
Yeah.
There's been copycats, that people that are into the occult might try and copycat something like that. But no one's actually ever been caught, which is really, really quite weird. And the FBI were involved in the cattle mutilations in the States in the 70s, I believe.
Wow, because there does seem to be a trend when you do look at cattle mutilations that they take, is it part of the cheek, the tongue,
that's right,
udders and rectum?
Yeah, they tend to take the soft tissue parts. So they'll tend to take what's called a cheek swipe, which means the jowls are taken out, exposing the teeth. We don't know why that's done. They might do an anal coring. They'll go into a certain depth of the anus, and then it'll be a circular bit taken out. Or they might take an eye out, or they might take an ear off, which is really unusual. We don't know why. Or an udder, an entire udder. There was a cow that actually had, as you may not know, but cows have 4 stomachs.
Yeah.
So this cow had one stomach of those 4 taken out, called the omasum. So the omasum is part of the stomach of a cow that's got folds in it, and it looks like the Bible, because they call it the Bible because it's got all these little like pages, and they're just folds within the actual stomach, which are there for absorption of the nutrients that the cow's eating. Well, in one of the mutilations, the mason was taken off without cutting any of the other organs, and that's, according to the vet, almost impossible.
Yeah, at least with the technology that we use,
Yeah.
the vets would know. You would assume that most vets that practice would be probably at least at the cutting edge of the technology that we have at the moment to do their job, because that's their job, right?
Yeah.
So, so it's just fascinating to hear some of the details that you've come across, or some of the cases that you've heard of since you've been the director for Australia, New Zealand for MUFON. I guess, are there any closing messages or statements that maybe you'd like to say?
I think basically I've been following the UFO phenomenon for close to nearly 40 years now, and basically I can see that these days now it's becoming more mainstream. I think that we've had developments in the field which are making it more credible. I think that the people who don't believe in UFOs and who have or dismiss them, there's debunkers around, there's skeptics around. I suggest that you have a read of the literature. It'll convince you, no matter how big a skeptic you are. I mean, there are professional skeptics and debunkers who just want to debunk things because they have an underlying urge or passion to debunk things. It's good to have somebody that's skeptical. We try to be skeptical about things as well. But we try to see both sides of things, and and this is a good way to actually treat the subject in the sense that you can actually look at it skeptically and take it for what it is, and then just basically filter out everything that is nonsense, and look at the subject in terms of what are the credible aspects of the actual report that you receive, and how do you how would you go about analysing that?
I completely agree. I think when you have this conversation out in the open, it does make it more mainstream. I think at the moment it has sort of been put in a box, and people don't really actively talk about the UFO subject. I'm sure some of my friends, when they see me do this interview or this conversation we're having, are going to be a bit shocked by it, and that's fine. It's just the way it is. So look, I've come out, guys. Not in that way. But so for me, I think the more people having this conversation and and having it treated in a more mainstream and socially acceptable way, I think that can only be a positive thing. So look, I mean, it's been wonderful having you here, Roger.
Thanks.
I've really enjoyed listening to you, what you've got to say. I think having someone like yourself who's got, as you mentioned, 40 years experience has been just fantastic to hear some of your experiences. So hopefully we'll have a few more conversations over the coming months.
I hope so. Yeah, it's been interesting talking to you, and as you can see, I really am passionate about the subject, and I really do. Over 40 years, I thought that maybe one day somebody will come and debunk everything, but they haven't. There's never been an instance where the UFO field stands on its own legs, and basically it will keep on standing. And one day, I don't know whether disclosure will happen, but until that day, we can only just keep studying the topic and researching it.
So for those of you at home, it's up to you to make your own mind up. I'm a believer. Obviously, Roger's a believer. It's up to you to do your own research. Go on the web. There's plenty of places to find information. Make your own mind up. Thanks for watching this video. I really hope you enjoyed it. So if you did like it, please make sure you hit the like button or subscribe to UFOs Australia YouTube channel. I have also created a UFOs Australia Facebook, so if you do have any encounters or anything that you'd like to talk to me about, please send me a private message on Facebook. So take care, and thank you so much for watching.